something interesting is sure to happen. Well, I think you ought to tell me who you are first. Mr. Rabbit, then why did you ask the question?
Goodness, this is quite extraordinary.
Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here?
But today is turning into the most curious adventure I have ever had.
Welcome to the Alice in Wonderland podcast. So this is a place for our listeners to open your mind, let your sense of wonder, imagination, and most importantly, curiosity loose. So I'm your host, Georgia Ellis, and today I'm joined by Shelly Johnson. Now, Shelly is the co-host of the Latter-day Lesbian podcast. This is where she shares openly and with a dose of humor, because I have listened to it, her experience of leaving the Mormon church and coming out of the closet. So let's get curious with Shelly. Welcome, Shelly.
Thank you, Georgia.
So good to have you here. As we were having a bit of a chat before we got started, and there's so many reasons why I'm super pumped to be talking to you, and we're not going to go into all of those reasons, but I think the main one is I love it when people experience some form of liberation in their life, and it sounds like that's what's happened to you. Before we dive in, I do have a question that I ask all of my guests. It's the same question. And I'm not sure whether you've listened to a podcast before of mine, but I'm going to ask you this question and I want you to think about it. So I want you to imagine that I'm a 7-year-old girl and I'm wandering through wonderful, beautiful Wonderland, as Alice does in the story Alice in Wonderland. Mm-hmm. And on my travels, I bump into Shelly. Shelly Johnson is just sitting there, potentially, let's just say you're looking into a stream and looking at your reflection, and I say, hey, Shelly, what is it that you do in this world? What's your story? Why are you here? What's going on for you? How would you answer that to a 7-year-old girl?
Wow. Well, seeing as how I have an 8-year-old boy, usually I'm just telling him to make sure he washes his hands, and he doesn't really come up with a lot of good questions for me. And I would definitely curb my language for a 7-year-old. But I would say that my life began without being offered the chance to make decisions. That my life began with basically my entire future planned out for me. And it took me 40 years to figure out that that wasn't what was for me. That wasn't going to bring about my best self, that it was actually not good, that it's not good to let people tell you what to do and to trust everyone when they tell you they know what's best for you. And I finally had the courage to stand up for myself and make scary decisions that were very difficult, but I did them. And now I'm so much happier because of it. And since I've gone through that, I can help thousands of other people who've had to go through almost the exact same thing. So That's what I do now. Yeah.
Awesome. What a great answer.
I didn't even swear. Wasn't that great?
Because you're talking to a 7-year-old, right?
I actually kept picturing my 5-year-old girl, like, okay, what would I say? Yeah.
Yeah. So let's unpack your story, your journey to this point. So tell us a little bit about what you just mentioned there, where you found yourself in a life where decisions were made for you. What did that look like? How did that come? What was that situation?
Sure. So I was born and raised Mormon, which is kind of an American religion starting out, and it basically teaches that the gospel was restored to the earth, and there's now a prophet that you need to do whatever he says, and the only way to be happy for eternity is to follow this one path. And when you're a girl, this path is prepare yourself to be a good wife, prepare yourself to have children, prepare yourself to get married young, don't so much worry about education, get married, have babies. Your divine nature is to be a mother. And your entire life is going to be keeping yourself worthy to get married in the temple, which means you abstain from premarital sex, coffee, tea, alcohol. I mean, we can go into all of that craziness, but then get married in the temple and keep your covenants and pay your tithing. Most importantly, pay your tithing. And you can then be together for eternity with your spouse and his other wives, because this is going to be a plural marriage in heaven. And basically that's your life. You're just a mom, which is great. But there's not another option. You don't get to choose anything else. And so for me growing up, I have 3 older brothers, and they're very macho. And my dad is also very macho. He was military. He was very, when I say jump, you say how high, just no nonsense kind of guy. And my mom was very meek and timid, didn't have an opinion, did whatever my dad said, just kind of let people run all over her. Very nice. She's a super nice lady, but just no spine. And so then as I saw that growing up, I was a tomboy growing up, because in the Mormon church, being a boy is better. You get the priesthood, which means you're closer to God. Girls don't get the priesthood. You are the leader of your family. The woman is supposed to ask you, is this okay? Should we do this? And the man gets the final choice. The men get all the high positions in the church. Women don't get really anything. Everything is run by men, everything. And so when you're a girl being raised in a family of all these strong boys and a strong father, and then your mother figure is weak and timid, and in my heart, I wasn't weak and timid. I was strong. I didn't like it. I wanted to be like the boys because they get to do the cool stuff. I didn't want to sit home and make bread with my mom. It just wasn't it's like, who wants to needlepoint all day? I sure didn't. I wanted to be out climbing trees and going hiking and fishing and all that stuff. But I was born a girl, and that just kind of screws you if you're Mormon. It wasn't until I was older that I realized that I was gay. But looking back, there were so many instances that had I been raised in a different family that talked about these kinds of things, it would have been a no-brainer. As far back as I can remember, it was probably fifth grade. Fifth grade, I remember standing in the lunch line for school. There were 2 lunch lines, and I was on one side. And on the other side, there was a girl, and she looked at me. And I took that as she was looking at me because she was attracted to me. Like somehow my mind made it into that, and it felt good. It felt right. It felt like I wanted to walk a little taller. It just felt good. And surely that's some kind of a hint as a child that there might be a little something going on here. There were more experiences like that as I got older, but in the Mormon religion, it's taught that being gay is not actually a thing. You can have same-sex attraction, which it happens, and they try to act like it happened because of some sort of molestation or some trauma, because God wouldn't make you gay. He makes men and women, and those are supposed to be together to have babies. Like that's it. And so gayness wasn't even talked about in my household growing up. If anything, it was a joke, like, oh, you're so queer, just those kind of rude jokes. And so I didn't even know what it was. There wasn't even, I had nothing. I had nothing to go on. There weren't like, gay TV shows. There was just nothing. And so as I continued growing up in the Mormon religion, and I didn't like it. I didn't feel accepted by God or worthy of anything because I was a girl, and I had a lot of daddy issues because my dad was very stern and I couldn't connect with him. And I tried to be athletic and strong and do all the boy things, trying to get his attention. And he would say things more like, oh, you look real pretty in that dress, because I had to wear a dress to church, which, by the way, I hated. Like, even to this day, now that I'm out of the closet, I won't wear a dress. I won't wear a skirt. I won't wear a dress. I am a grown ass adult. I'm not going to do it. But when I was Mormon, you had to wear dresses to church, to all sorts of functions. And I just felt wrong. Like I was wearing someone else's clothes. And it also felt like it took my power. If I was wearing a dress, it just felt like I didn't have strength anymore. I couldn't stand up for myself. Look, it's so weird to analyze it now.
So
That
dress was your kryptonite.
It was like I suddenly couldn't have an opinion, and I felt like people were looking at me like I looked weird because I felt weird, you know? So it was hard for me growing up, having to be the only girl, and my brothers got to do all the cool stuff, and they always made fun of me. And I had, like I was saying, I had some daddy issues. And so I started looking for approval from boys and from men. And of course that led to promiscuity, which then led to being sort of shunned in my church because I had to go and repent to the bishop and tell him these things that I had done, which is horribly embarrassing as a teenager.
Yeah.
Just so much shame and guilt. Like I was just raised on Mormon shame and guilt. And so I ended up going to college for a couple of years on basketball scholarships, which again should have been a clue that I was gay and I had a mullet. I mean, why didn't someone tell me?
A mullet in itself is a sign, isn't it?
Am I right? I should show you some pictures. You'd be like, yeah, you were gay? Oh my gosh, come on. No one told me. It could have saved a lot of time.
At this point, you probably still don't really have a full understanding of what being gay is because you've got you've got nothing there in your
nothing.
Nothing to draw it against, nothing to compare it to, no story,
Nope.
So off to college on a basketball scholarship, wearing your mullet with pride.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny too because my second year of college, I was at a school in Arizona, and there were a couple of lesbians on the team. But maybe they just weren't attractive to me. I don't know. But I would think that I would have maybe at that time somehow experimented, but I didn't, because in my mind it was like, no, I have to get my life together. I have to be a good Mormon girl. So even though I was doing the wrong things according to Mormonism, I still knew, I mean, I didn't know, but I thought I knew that the only way to happiness was to follow God's Mormon plan for me.
You still had this conditioning that this was, and it's still the lack of decision. It was still somewhere within you was this story of who you had to be. And even though you had potentially opportunities and you could have had exposure to different things, this inside, Shelly's saying, no, I've just got to be a good Mormon. I've got to get back home, put my dress on.
Exactly. I couldn't, when I was having my wild streak in my first couple of years of college, I couldn't even enjoy it because I felt so guilty. And I felt like, I would cross a line with a boy and know that I would have to repent, and all these things would stack up in my head, and I would be thinking, oh my gosh, one of these days I've got to go to a bishop and tell him all of this stuff. And it just was this bigger weight. So much to carry around, way too much for, I was 19, I ended up then going to Brigham Young University because my dad was the mission president in Germany. My mom and dad went there for 3 years, and that would give me free schooling at BYU. And I got to BYU, and this is a Mormon school. This is where all the Mormons are.
I've seen the Book of Mormon, and they talk about that have you seen the Book of Mormon?
I saw it for the first time like a month ago, and I loved it.
I've seen it twice because I loved it so much. Now the thing is, I got a really good education on the Mormon. I think I did on the Mormon religion through that. So
you did. Active Mormons will tell you, no, that's not how it is, but that is exactly how it is. That's why that musical is so good, because it's bluntly honest. Anyway, so at BYU, when you go to BYU, it's everyone just gets married young. I've heard it called Brigham Young or Brigham Young instead of Brigham Young University, because you just go and get married. And I'm there, and everyone's getting married, and I'm living with two of my brothers in my parents' house because they weren't there. And I was basically at the point where I knew I'm not happy. I need to get married and start a family. That's what I need to do because I'm not happy. So every time I wasn't happy in life, and looking back, I realized I had depression. I had depression, like real depression. But I told myself every time I was sad, it was because I was sinning, because that's what I was taught. If you're not happy with yourself, it's because there's something wrong that you are doing. And so when I would go through these times of being lonely or whatever, like normal people go through, I internalized that as I'm sinning. God's not happy with me. I have to repent of something. So I ended up meeting my ex-husband now, and we dated a little bit. I wasn't that attracted to him, maybe because I'm gay.
Could have something to do with it.
It probably did. But I felt like now's the time I have to get married. And he looked good on paper. He was a returned missionary. My dad would probably like him. He has good Mormon family. And so we did. We got married, and it was not great. There were just a lot of struggles from both of us being Mormon. And I mean, that's a whole like 4 podcast episode conversation there, but
we can get people to tune into your podcast for those episodes.
I'm sure
you
get it all.
dive deep into that.
There is so much. Yeah. So Brent is his name. Brent and I together had 7 kids, because I was kind of birthing my way into heaven, sort of like, my one thing I'm supposed to be good at is being a mom. So I kept having kids. And don't get me wrong, I love my kids. I adore my kids, but 7 is a lot.
Mm.
I know I wouldn't have had 7 kids had I not been Mormon.
Do you think that having the kids was also part of you in denial and potentially repenting? Like, if I have another child, I'm a good Mormon, aren't I?
Absolutely. Yeah. This was like, look at me. I'm being a good Mormon woman. I'm having kids. I'm teaching them Mormonism. I'm showing them their path. Like, there was pride in that. And it felt good for me to finally have like the love and respect of the Mormon community around me, because I wasn't that great as a teenager and as a young college student. And now that I went to BYU, and then I got married, and I'm having all these kids, and people just think I'm fantastic. And my dad thought I was great. Like, I could never get my dad to think I was great, ever. But now he was saying, "Oh, you're such a great mom. So proud of the way you're raising your kids." And I needed that, because I didn't get that growing up. When I turned 40, I kind of had this breakdown. I just had my 7th kid, and I was having postpartum depression. And my kids are like 1.5 to 2 years apart. They're bunched in there. Like right now, my oldest is 19 and my youngest is 5. So 7 kids in there. And I had a bit of a breakdown, and I thought, all these people are looking at me and they think that I have this super strong testimony, that I'm so righteous, and I know I'm so connected to God, but I just don't feel it. Again, I don't feel it. So what's wrong with me? And I decided I'm going to get a better relationship with God. I'm going to study my scriptures. I'm going to pray. I'm going to all these things. And then that's what's going to work. And so I did. And the more I studied the scriptures, the more it was kind of a wake-up call to me that the religion I was raised in was not really like the Christianity taught in the scriptures. And my husband and I had a lot of talks about it, and he was starting to feel the same way. And so we sort of took a step away from Mormonism. And once we took that step away and started analyzing, it wasn't that long until we left completely.
Yeah. So you really moved from there's an analogy of being on the dance floor where you can't see what's going on, right? But when you get up on the balcony, you can actually see what's going on in the world around you.
Yeah.
So you're so caught up in Mormonism on the dance floor. I don't know. Are you allowed to dance as a Mormon? I don't know.
You can, but you can't dance like chest to chest. You have to.
Okay. So you're on the dance floor, and you can't see the wood for the trees. You can't see the you're too busy in it. But when you lift, and this is anything in life, once you lift yourself up out of what you're caught up in and look at it objectively from the balcony, you get to see where things aren't actually fitting together, where things aren't working, and where that just doesn't feel or seem or look, or it's just, I'm going to use the word right, but you just get this real sense, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And imagine the dance floor and everyone you're dancing with and everyone around you are also Mormon. And so
Yeah.
they're telling you, oh, you're such a great dancer. Look, we're all dancing the same. We're the best
I've got
dancers.
the best step.
Yeah.
Hey, this is awesome.
Those people dancing somewhere else, oh, we feel bad for them. We're so glad we're all, it really is this us versus them mentality. And you feel so blessed and lucky to be Mormon. And so it was very easy to get caught up in that. And every other religion and other lifestyle was looked down on and frowned upon and even made fun of. And so,
I think that's something that goes across most religions.
yeah,
I
yeah.
was brought up in a religious household as well. And we lived next door to a Catholic family, and we were Baptist, and their beliefs were wrong.
Yep. Yeah. I think that's generally across the board, which is
Yeah,
why I think religion is so divisive, because it gives you the right to judge other one as being wrong. And that's just, it doesn't help. It doesn't help out in life. So when we stepped back away from the church, and then I started making friends with people who were not Mormon, people that I was sort of afraid to be friends with, because when you're Mormon, your entire community is Mormonism, because you go to church with all these people, your kids are in activities with all of their kids. It's just so closed off. And I was making friends with other people and I liked them, and they were nice and they were fun. And the more I stepped away from Mormonism and sort of cut that part off from my life and just kind of exhaled and acted how I just felt like acting, I realized that these people liked me for me. They didn't like me because I was the best Mormon or because I had the most kids or because I was the most righteous. They just liked me because I was fun. The real me is fun, and I'm a little irreverent, and I like to be the life of the party, and that stuff was all squashed in Mormonism.
So when you're going through this discovery of people like me for me, not because I'm a good mum and wearing a dress, your husband at the time is going through I'm going to use the word awakening.
Yes.
I don't know if that's the right word. Going through the same sort of thing of realization at the same time, right? So so both of you on this journey, you're out there in society, stepping away from the clique of Mormonism and discovering new people, and hey, they're all pretty cool. And so he was enjoying that for himself as well at the same time.
He was. In the Mormon world, you could call it, you have a faith crisis, and it's like different things happen as you grow up, and things that you're taught, they don't make sense, and you just don't want to think about it, so you put it on a shelf. And something else happens, like, oh, that doesn't feel right, but I'm going to put it on a shelf because Mormonism is true. Put it on a shelf, and pretty soon your shelf is so full that it crashes. That's your faith crisis. And so many people go through that. My ex and I, so Brent and I, we stayed kind of on a similar path. And he stopped at a certain point, still believing in certain aspects of Mormonism. He doesn't still belong to the Mormon church, though. And I kind of paused there with him, but that wasn't right for me. And I just kept searching, to the point where, well, back up a little. Growing up, again, we didn't talk about being gay. But as I got older, like in the 90s, I got married in 1996, so the mid 90s and things, there was more of the gay thing going on. And within Mormonism, they were starting to talk about it, like, this is the evil of the world. This is going to cause the second coming. The gay people are trying to destroy the traditional family. They're an enemy of God. They're sinners. I mean, it was really bad. And this was all fed into my head, and I believed it. And I regurgitated the same words, and I'm ashamed of that now. I mean, not so much because I know that wasn't really me, but that's how I was taught. I was basically taught to sort of hate who I was, not realizing who I was. And then when Brent and I left the church and I was meeting new people, and I met some gay people, and it was just interesting to me, and they were nice and kind, and they just weren't off having gay sex with random strangers, which is what I was taught is all that gay people want to do. And I sort of let my guard down, and I just decided, you know what? I don't think God hates gay people. I don't think he cares about if you're gay or not. And I kid you not, within like a day of me just letting that darkness and that judgment out of my heart, I found myself being attracted to women. And it was first at the gym, and I'm going, why do I keep staring at these girls working out? Like, whoa, what's going on? And why am I not noticing the hot guy that just took his shirt off? But it was more than just a physical attraction. Like these girls at the gym, I wanted to be their best friends. I wanted to know everything about them. I wanted to tell them everything about me. I needed to be close to them. And I had these two close friends of mine who actually had also left the Mormon church, which, by the way, ex-Mormons are the most fun people ever, just so you know.
They're making up for lost time.
Oh, I know. We're like exploring everything at age 40.
Don't worry, I did that at 30, so yeah, I'm hearing it.
Okay, good. These two best friends of mine, I just couldn't get enough of them. I needed them in my life. I needed to be texting with them all day. I wanted to do everything with them. I was just consumed with this feeling of like, I can't get enough. And of course, the more that happened, it drew me away from my husband. And if I'm being honest, I was never really attracted to him anyway. We started having problems. There were fights. And he just asked me one day, he said, "Do you think you might be gay?" And I just cried. And I said, I think I might. And he said, "Well, you're probably bisexual," because his assumption is, well, we've had sex, so you must at least somehow be into men. But I had this moment that I had gone out with my friends and he had stayed home, and I came home late at night. It was well after midnight. And I had had such a good time with my girlfriends, and just laughing and sharing stories and bonding. And I just dreaded coming home. I didn't want to. I didn't want to be there anymore, because it just felt like it wasn't my life, and not my kids, but just my husband, you know. And so I walked into the bedroom, and he was asleep, and he was laying on top of the covers. And he's good looking. He works out. He's attractive. He was wearing just like some boxers, and he was laying there. And I stood next to him for probably like 5 minutes, and I just stared at him, trying to evoke some kind of feeling, anything, some connection, an attraction, anything at all. And I couldn't. There was just nothing. And I went in the bathroom and I sat down on the floor and I just cried. I cried because I was too afraid to leave. And so I didn't want to put the kids through it and all these issues. And so I had just resigned myself that I'm just going to have this mediocre life with him and never feel connected. And I just want to be with a girl. I just want that energy. And I can never explore it. I can never feel it. I'm just going to live the rest of this life. And it broke me, because it was like I was just saying, this is it. This is all I get. And I tried to keep the marriage together, and so did he. But the more I tried, the more he felt that I wasn't really into it. It's like I was going through the motions. And finally it fell apart. We got into our last huge fight, and yeah, we separated, and I decided that I wanted to date girls. And he and I talked about it, and I told him, yeah, I'm going to go date girls and see where I'm at. And he was thinking I would date girls and just come back to him. But I knew, once he kind of said, yeah, go date girls, I knew that was it.
Yeah.
And I fell in love very quickly. I met Mary, my current partner, and she's fantastic. I posted on Match.com, which is like an online dating service, and it was just a picture of me, and my profile was something like, "Help, I don't know what I'm doing. I think I'm gay. I just got out of a cult that I was in for 40 years. I'm probably just going to erase this." Like this blabbing of random shit, right?
Honesty.
Like just pure, like throwing up honesty. Like, I just got to get this out. Probably going to delete it. And the next day, Mary saw that, and she messaged me, and she goes, "Hey, everything's going to be okay." And that was just the thing that I needed. And we started talking, and she just captivated me. She was everything that my husband wasn't. She was just soft and listening and tender and motivating, and just what my heart needed, what my heart always needed and never had. She accepted me for everything, and she helped me so much. I know I'm just babbling, but can I tell you about our first date? Because it's
let's go down that track.
Okay. So I was
So
scared to
is this your first date with first official date with a female as well?
my absolutely first. This was
All
going to be
right,
my
we've got
first.
to hear this story. We can't have this
It's,
podcast without your first date in there.
of course. Um, I was scared to death because this was going to be my first time that I was going to be face to face with a woman who knew that I was a lesbian and that she was a lesbian too. Does that make sense?
Yep.
By then some of my friends knew, but this is just a completely different situation. And we had been texting. We hadn't even talked on the phone yet, just texting for like 2 weeks, and she wanted to meet me. And so the day of our date, I just kept coming up with excuses in my mind. I'll just tell her my child is sick, like anything, because I was so freaked out. So we met at this bar. I got there first on purpose, and I just chugged a beer, just anything to, try to get the nerves down. And I sat there, and she came in, and I was relieved because she was very cute. You never really know online if someone really looks like how they show that they do, but she was very cute. And she sat down next to me, and I was so nervous. I was trying not to shake. And then she said, well, I'm going to go use the restroom real quick. So she got up, went to the restroom, and I got my phone out and I texted her and I said, will you please stay in the bathroom for a while? And just text me because I'm so nervous. And she's like, I'll give you 4 minutes, So I couldn't, it was just crazy that, oh my gosh, I'm sitting in a bar and there's this girl, and I've
Because
been.
it goes against, even though you've moved away from all those beliefs, and you're starting to realize, and mind you, I'm no psychologist right now, but I think too, there's an element of us that has this in the subconscious, all these things of all the old conditioning
Yeah,
is still there. It's still there. Those little
absolutely.
stories still pop up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that guilt and that shame is, most of it's probably gone, but there's still residue there.
Oh,
And
it for sure.
yeah. So I can
And that,
imagine you sitting there and first time, and this is it. I'm
yeah,
doing it.
doing
I
it.
want to do it, but heck is, I can just imagine it. Just imagine it.
Oh,
Keep going with the story. So she waited
it was.
4 minutes,
She
right?
waited 4 minutes. She came out. I mean, it was like all of my senses were just on overload. I just, it was just so intense. And so we're sitting there, and we're just chatting, and her leg was kind of touching my leg, like just leaning her leg against my leg. And I just wanted to yell up to the rooftop, like, oh my gosh, there's a woman and her leg's touching my leg. And like, it was just this like exhilarating, like I'm being me. This is me. And this is so like, I've never done this before, but I'm finally being myself. And then she put her hand on my leg, just kind of like, and just squeezed it real quick, because I think I'd said something funny, and she reacted, and it was like lightning in my body. Like all of my senses just so high on this experience. So we were there for, I don't know, probably a couple hours just chatting, and then I was gonna walk her to her car. Which, by the way, when I was a kid, I always wanted to be chivalrous. As a girl, I wanted to open a door for someone and put my arm around someone. Like I wanted to do those like manly things, and I couldn't, because I was a girl. I was supposed to be weak and let them do that for me. And when I got to say, hey Mary, can I walk you to your car, it felt amazing. It was just, I don't know, what a simple thing, but I felt like, oh my gosh, this is me. And so as we were walking to her car, I started getting nervous, because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what if she's going to want to kiss me? I'm not ready. I don't know what to do. So I was in a panic. And what if someone sees us? And, I'm only a few miles from my house. Like, what if a neighbor or somebody drives by? Every thought, to where I was in this just full blown anxiety mode and walking and trying to act cool. And we get close to her car. She goes, oh, that's my car right up there on the left. And I just freaked out. I said, okay, well, I'm going to keep going. And I just started speed walking as fast as I could away from her, like up the street, turned the corner, ran to the parking garage, just like heart racing, got in the car, and just, when I texted her, I said, I'm so sorry. And she's like, yeah, where did you go? I just ditched her. I just ran the hell off, because I didn't know what to do. It was too much. Thankfully, she forgave me for that, and we continued to date. But really quickly, as I'm thinking about this, our first time when I stayed the night at her place, and it was amazing. It was right. It was just loving and beautiful. But afterward, and I was going to stay the night, I had an anxiety attack
Yeah.
because all the thoughts came back like, what are you doing? You're a sinner. You should be home with your husband and your kids. This is wrong. And I just started crying and crying, and it was uncontrollable sobbing. And poor Mary, she's just holding me but I trusted her enough to tell her everything I was thinking. I was telling her, I feel like I shouldn't be here. I feel like I need to be back with my husband and kids, which I'm sure didn't feel good for her to hear, but she listened and understood. And I just said, this is an anxiety attack. And all of my upbringing is now just crushing me with guilt.
And I wonder if, I know too, and this is our parents, right? They do the best thing for us based on what they know. Like they don't know any different. But yeah,
Right.
there are times also in my own life as well, where I've had those moments of feeling utter guilt about things that I've been told and things that even though I thought I'd moved past it, there's that, as I said, there's that residue, isn't there? And it bubbles up to the surface. But what a beautiful, loving gesture from Mary, just to sit there and listen, and probably because she got it, she understood. She probably went through. Now I don't know, and we're not here to talk about Mary. Probably went through something similar herself at some stage.
Yeah, well, her mom is very evangelical Christian and thinks that being gay is wrong. So there's been a struggle there too. But she got it, and she could look past her feelings of being hurt that I was saying I should be back with my husband and kids. She could sort of feel that hurt, but still want to hear what I'm saying and love me through it. You know what I mean? Where a lot of people would be like, well, fine, go then. But she just doesn't have a reactive bone in her body. She's just so patient with me, and I could be real crazy. She's fantastic. Within our first few months of dating, even, she kept telling me, you have a story. The more she got to know, the more I would just tell her everything about my life, she would say, you have a story and you need to get it out. And I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to do it. This needs to be told. We ended up moving in together about a year, 8 or 9 months later, to where we currently live, and came up with the idea of a podcast. And so Mary came up with the name of Latter-day Lesbian. And I thought it would be basically a podcast of me just getting some things off my chest. And then that would be that. I would heal a little bit, and there you go, done. Within the first couple of weeks, I was shocked at how many listeners started writing in saying, oh my gosh, you're telling my story. I thought I was alone. I thought I was the only one. Georgia, it is shocking how many Mormons there are out there who had my same childhood, who felt they had to make these choices, and who are now miserable. Gay or straight, doesn't matter, just miserable in their situation, and they just want out and they're afraid. And so what went from a podcast that's for me, now it's a podcast for everyone out there who needs someone to tell it like it is and make them feel like, yeah, you're not crazy. You actually have experienced these things. Because when you're a Mormon and you feel all this weird things going on, you think, well, maybe I'm just crazy.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm the only one. You're not the only one. And I think
it actually extends further than Mormonism as well.
Oh yeah.
Is Mormonism a word? It is now.
It is.
Because there's people who we get caught up in any type of conditioning of how we need to be, and we get caught behind these belief systems that actually restrict us and don't liberate us. So regardless of whether it's brought up in a religion, it could be a culture, it could be anything that's actually restricting us. And if you're being brave and courageous enough to share your story, there's plenty of people out there that can relate to it and just waiting for a voice to hear and go, oh, I'm not, like you said, I'm not crazy. I'm not stupid. Right. And there are a lot of people out there who struggle, who have depression, who have these dark thoughts and all these things going on because they think there's something wrong with them, and there's not.
Right. Exactly. I thought something was wrong with me my entire life. Our listenership started out with Mormons, ex-Mormons mostly, but it's now spread. Because you're right, it's not just an ex-Mormon problem. It's an everyone problem. It's anyone who feels like they don't fit in, or they somehow are trapped, or they're stuck in something, or they know someone who's stuck and they listen, they're like, oh my gosh, you have to hear this podcast, and then they can connect in such a way. I feel so lucky. I feel so lucky to be in this position now where I can help people and form these relationships with people. I mean, we really do have thousands of listeners at this point, and
I know. I noticed you hit a
replied to
milestone.
everyone.
You hit a
I
milestone,
did.
didn't you? 50,000.
Yes, we have 21 episodes out right now, and we just hit 50,000 downloads.
That
And
is epic.
I love it. I love it because I feel like it's doing something good.
Yeah.
And I reply to everyone who sends in a message, that takes up the bulk of my time. But I love it because people want to be heard and be related to, and it's just great. I'm so happy. Yeah.
So you now have the ability to, in a way, because I know Mary's part of your podcast, to be the Mary for everybody else, that voice of sanity, that person who understands, that person who listens, that person who cares. So that's what the podcast now is. It's you stepping into those beautiful, caring, nurturing shoes of Mary for those that are going through what you've been through.
Oh yeah. And it feels so good. It feels good that people look to me for comfort, because I was always the one looking for comfort. And now that I feel like I'm stronger and I'm more stable and I see the world better than I used to, and I've been through a lot, I can be that comfort. I can listen. I get it. Like, I went through it. A lot of people write in and say, I'm afraid. I'm gay. I'm married to a man. I'm in love with a woman, but we have kids, and I'm afraid. And I always say, look, telling your husband is you're going to flick over the first domino, and you don't get to pick where all the dominoes land. And you know what? That is okay. Everyone gets to react how they react to what you do and who you are. But when you're all at the other side of it, it's so much better.
Yeah.
It
reminds me of Joseph Campbell's beautiful quote, which I love, and it's become a little bit of a mantra for me in my life in just different things. But his quote is, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." And I just think that's just a beautiful metaphor for life. You know, there's so many things that we feel restricted by, being potentially stuck in a relationship that society says we need to be in, a husband-wife situation, and not realizing that you get one shot at this life. That's what we believe. We don't know if there's anything afterwards.
Yeah, we don't know. Yeah,
really, no one knows, right? So make the most of it. Make the most of it. Face those fears. You know, everyone, we're all worth it. I really want to ask some questions, because
sure.
Just while you've been talking, there's a few things that popped up. One is that, okay, so your father and mother were, I'm going to say, I don't know if this is the right term, deeply ingrained in the Mormon religion.
Oh yeah.
Are they still?
Absolutely. Yes.
So how is all of this, how have they, the term's probably going to be reacted, not responded. How have they reacted to what's unfolded in your life now, and with your relationship with Mary? And
it's hard. And here's the thing. They're such strict Mormons. They're such true believing Mormons that they are going to have the opinion of whatever the Mormon prophet tells them is the opinion. And so I know exactly how they feel about me, even if they don't say it. And I have this advantage in that I was Mormon for 40 years. So I know all the things. So I know that they believe that I'm sinning, that they believe that I will be cut off from them for eternity, along with all of my kids, that the life that I'm living right now, where I claim to be happy, that I'm not actually happy. I'm quite miserable. And so it's hard to have a relationship with them, because their entire world revolves around the church, the Mormon church. Any conversations are something about the church. And I just, it's hard for me to sit quietly and not say something like, Dad, do you know how ridiculous you sound? Do you know how hurtful those things are that you believe? Because I'm trying to maintain a relationship, but I think at this point, there will be no depth to our relationship, because they won't ask me about anything that matters to me. They won't ask me, I feel like if I tell my parents that I'm gay and that I have a girlfriend and I'm in love with her and we're going to move in together, you would think that they would say, well, what's her name? Where did you meet her? What does she do for a living? Nothing. They don't ask. I mean, they're getting better now, but they didn't ask anything about her. They've never asked about my experience of coming out of the closet. They've never asked about why I left the church. Never even asked. because in Mormonism, you're told that people leave the church because they get offended or that they want to go sin. And so they've never asked me about the podcast. All these things are important to me now. Being gay, it's important to me. I'm being myself. The podcast is huge to me. My girlfriend, I adore her. She's amazing. Raising my kids to be free to choose whatever they want, that is huge to me.
That was going to be another one of my questions. So
yeah.
So
all the things that are the most important things to me, my parents don't want to hear about it. And so how do you
have a relationship, a surface level relationship?
Yes.
They haven't ostracized you, disowned you, never speak to you. So you still,
correct,
go around their place for dinner, so to speak.
Yeah, it could be so much worse. I know a lot of Mormon friends who their family has just cut them off completely. So my family has not. And for that, I appreciate it. I'm sure that's hard for them. But also, I know how they really feel about me, and that saddens me. And I just have to remember this is my life to live. And it doesn't matter if I tell them, guys, that's ridiculous that God would pull me away from you in an afterlife because I'm gay. Like, seriously, that's the God you choose. It doesn't do any good to tell them that because that's just what they believe. And so I don't believe that's true, but I know they really are hurting because that's what they believe. But what am I supposed to do? The only thing that would make them happy is if I were to end my relationship with Mary, go back to Brent, raise the family, in a heterosexual, like that's what would make them happy. Go back to church. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
So
how has all of this changed your parenting? So you mentioned before you've got 7 children, and now you just mentioned it like a minute or so ago that now you want to liberate your children, so to speak. So what's different now with your parenting opposed to, I was the perfect Mormon wife and I was bringing my children up. Now their mum has now done a flip.
Oh, a total flip.
What's different with your parenting style now?
Back when I was really Mormon, I had a lot of anxiety surrounding the need for my kids to be perfect. They had to stay morally clean. They had to serve missions. They had to get married in the temple. Like, they have to stay Mormon. And it would cause me so much stress. And if one of my kids sort of acted out, it would be things like, is that, God knows that you just lied to me, right? I mean, I was very condemning of any little thing. And for as many flaws as I have, the one amazing thing I did for my kids that will count for any bad choices I've made was leaving the Mormon church, because I had planned their life out. And if they had done anything else, I would have been disappointed. And now I just honestly want them to be happy in whatever they want to be. I'm not telling my daughters, hey, cover your shoulders because you're walking pornography right now, like I was told when I was a teen. I don't tell my sons, you better make sure you stay worthy so you can serve a mission. I don't care. I just want them to be happy. I can ask them, what do you want to do? I don't go to my daughter and say, what does your future husband look like in your mind? I can say, do you want to go to college? What do you want to do? What's your career? My kids can swear around me and I don't act like it's the end of the world. I can just say, don't say that when grandma and grandpa visit. It's just, it's this, an example, when I decided to tell my kids that I was gay, my husband at the time, we were separated, he was so worried that it was going to traumatize them. But we had already been out of the church for like 2 years. And so all that brainwashing of gay is wrong, it's a sin, I had deprogrammed that out of them at that point. And so when I told them that I was gay, they were like, cool. And then we were in the car driving to the movies, and I was still concerned that I would have traumatized them. And I said, and I turned the music down. I'm like, guys, are you sure you're okay? I just dumped a lot of news on you. They're like, yeah, we're fine. Turn the music back up. Turned it back up. And then I just kept thinking like, oh, I'm sure this is traumatizing them. And so I turned the music down again and I said, guys, can we talk? And my one kid's like, you mean about your gayness? Do we have to? It's okay, Mom. I said, you guys want to go to therapy or anything? And my other kid goes, Mom, you're gay. It's not like you're an axe murderer. It's fine. So it was just this.
Aren't kids amazing?
Oh my gosh, because had that been back when we were Mormon and if they were still Mormon and I was telling them that I was gay, there would have been tears and begging and no, just repent and shame. And this was like, oh yeah, it's cool. My mom's gay. How cool is that? And so my kids don't judge anyone, where I was kind of raising some judgmental assholes back when we were Mormon. They just love everyone. They just are free.
It's funny you say that. I find with my own upbringing that within a religion, I found even though I didn't think I was, I tend to judge people more because of that, because of the
Absolutely.
filter that I would see the world through, which
Yep.
I've been able to remove that lens. But it's interesting you say that judgmental side of the kids, and bless you for being able to give them that freedom to remove that
Yeah.
lens at that early age, and
Yeah.
to give them that ability to think for themselves,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and make their
I,
own decisions. And
I didn't, it wasn't until I was in my 40s where I had that gift of being able to feel like one of everyone else. So when I was Mormon, it was very much us versus them, like I'd said. And when you're Mormon, you're not allowed to drink coffee, right? And which is something that like everyone does. They go to the coffee house, they sit with their friends and they drink coffee and chat. I never did that. I never had that social connection with people. The first time post Mormonism, I went to a coffee house and I sat down with some friends and drank a cup of coffee. It was this incredible feeling washed over me of I'm part of humanity.
it wasn't the caffeine, it was it was you.
It might have been. I don't know. But it felt like I was accepted by everyone, and all of a sudden the whole world could be my friend, and I understood everyone, and I wasn't looking down and trying to judge. I could just love them. It was an amazing feeling, and I got my very first tattoo was actually a coffee mug on my calf.
Well, there you go, a great symbol.
I know it was my symbol
And
of breaking free.
I could go down so many rabbit holes with you, and like one of them is, why the heck's wrong, what's wrong with coffee? Like,
Okay, here's what I tell people. If you try to make Mormonism, you won't make it make sense. You can't, because it's nonsense. Because here's the thing. That it's from the Word of Wisdom, which was supposedly revealed to Joseph Smith like back in the 1800s. And it says no tea or hot drinks. And so then as time went on, they interpret hot drinks as being coffee. So no coffee because it's a hot drink. But guess what? We can have hot chocolate as hot as we freaking want it, right? So they said, well, no, it's not about the temperature. It's because of the caffeine. Okay, but guess what? We can drink Coke and Mountain Dew until we die of sugar diabetes. But that's not a sin. And so it doesn't, oh, well, can I have cold coffee? Well, no, it's still coffee. Well, yeah, but I thought it was because it was hot. Well, no, it's the caffeine. But Coke, it doesn't make sense. It's just
and here's the
because
thing.
someone said, God said. That's it.
Yeah. And here's the thing, this is, I think, the lesson. It's not about religion. It's about if we find ourselves in a place where other people are doing the thinking for us and we're not
Yes.
being curious, we're not questioning those people of authority and go, well, how do they know? How does that fit in?
Yeah.
You're taking away your God-given right and your skill to think.
Right.
You no
Right.
longer think. It's not just decision making. It's actually they're doing your thinking for you. They're keeping
Oh,
you
yeah.
stupid. And it's not just
Absolutely.
religions, right? It's sometimes it's companies you work for.
Yep.
It absolutely could be churches. It could be schools. It could be
It could be your
anything.
family. It could be your group of friends. It could be anything.
Yeah. And you've got to, I think, as individuals, we've got to realize that you've got to sit down and ask our questions. Well, how do they know that? Have I been curious and gone to see, like what you said, well, then why can't I drink coffee? I'll have an iced coffee. No, it's caffeine, but we can have Coke.
Coke. Here's what they do is they have a trump card called God said it. So the prof can say, well, the mysteries of God, that's what God wants. And so when people are so devoted to another human being that they will do whatever he says because he says God said it, you're screwed. You stop thinking. Because if you can accept that polygamy is what God wants and the whole coffee thing and wearing the weird undergarments is just, I mean, literally, we could go on for
Weird
hours.
undergarments, like what?
Yeah, it's a Mormon thing. You have to wear undergarments. It's like shorts and a shirt that goes under your clothes, and they're just constricting and horrible. I don't wear them anymore, obviously, and that was another big freeing experience of mine.
I can just imagine you running naked through a field. I'm free.
Oh, I'm such a nudist. Actually, the very first time I started, I was stopped wearing my garments, and I was just standing outside, and I was wearing a tank top, which I never went outside in like a tank top. And I was standing out there and the breeze hit my shoulder, and it kind of made the hair on my shoulder, not that my shoulders are hairy, but you know what I mean, just kind of stand up. And it was like this connection with Mother Nature. It just felt right. I don't know. Every time I tell an experience about discovery, leaving this I consider a cult of Mormonism, it always has to do with connecting to something else around me that I didn't get to connect to when I was so brainwashed and shut in a box. Now, then I was starting to connect with Mother Nature and connecting with people as I was drinking coffee and connecting with other religions, realizing, well, they're not sinners any worse than I was, and connecting with just everything. Connection is so important to me now. I crave it.
Yeah, and because you were so closed off with that, you had connections, but those connections were restricting connections.
Yeah, and I don't even think they were great connections, because in Mormonism, everyone is kind of pretending to be perfect. You don't talk about your flaws. I never told anyone about my experimenting with sex and things when I was a teenager. Like, no. Like, everyone needs to think that you're perfect. So it's all these people walking around acting perfect. And you can't connect with someone unless you really know them.
Yeah,
in my opinion. So
yeah, it's right. There's no real deep connection there, because there's no honesty. It's just a facade, isn't it? Everyone's just walking around with this facade in their dresses and their undergarments. I'm learning a lot here, and we haven't even touched on a lot of things. So,
girl, there's so much.
So I'm going to. We could talk forever, and I've still got so many questions going around in my head. But I think our listeners are probably going, "Wow, this has been going for close to an hour now, girls. Come on."
Sorry.
No. Don't be sorry. Don't be sorry. I love it. There's so much gold in your experience.
Thank you.
Not, as we said earlier, not just the fact that it's you know, rediscovering your independence, being able to think for yourself, decide for yourself. It's actually, and leaving a religion. It's not about that. It's about you pushing past and thinking for yourself now, and creating the life you want, not having those restrictions. And it doesn't say, and I know right now that your life is not filled with, rainbows and unicorns. I know that you have down days, and you have days of grief and all that. This happens. This is life. But now you do it from a completely different point of view of the world. You're connected. You've got ways that you can move through all this stuff. You've got people, and hey, you've even got Mother Nature blowing on your shoulder now.
I know, right? Isn't that great?
Isn't it
even in my most down days, because I still struggle with, I have anxiety and depression. It comes and goes, but even in my most down days, I'm able to look back at how far I've come and the life that I was living and pretending, a few years ago. And at least in my life now, I don't have to pretend. I always have that going for me. I have honesty. Honesty is my best friend. And I found, because I didn't know this in Mormonism, because you hide all of your flaws, but I found that people actually love me for my honesty, which is something I never used before. I never could be honest.
And they love you for your flaws too.
Yes. And it's easier to connect with people when you share your flaws, because no one wants to be best friends with the perfect girl, because then you feel like they're looking down on you if you mess up. But if we can just
feel like you can never live up to them, you can never be like them. But hey, we're all human. I've stuffed up big time. And I would have been kicked out of the Mormon religion, I think, at a very early age.
You never would have made it.
I wouldn't have made it. Mind you, I think at 17, I can still remember sitting in a church I might have been with my parents, and thinking, why do I do what? And I started questioning it, and I just stopped going to church.
There you go.
Good
17.
for you. But here's the thing, though, and I think you're saying this too, is even though I'd stopped going to church, the stories and the conditioning carried with me for another 15 years or so. And even today, I still have things pop up, and I go, whoa, that blindsided me.
Yep. Absolutely.
I
found that too from podcasting, because we'll start talking about something and I'll trigger, like one of the episodes we were talking about people wearing suits, and I started going down this rabbit hole of how I can't stand men in suits anymore because of all these things that happened to me. And I just kind of broke, and I started crying in the middle of recording, because I was having flashbacks of every man in a suit that mistreated me. And I didn't know I was that damaged at that point. And so many people wrote in saying, I triggered too. I didn't know I was that damaged. And so you never know when it's going to pop up. These things are ingrained in us, and it hits you. And then but I try to be grateful when it hits me, because then I can process and move through it and understand other people who are triggering about the same things, you know?
Yeah. And it can really, I'm going to say blindside us, but it's actually a beautiful golden opportunity for us to reflect, to look at it. And then with our beautiful ability to reason and our sense of liberty, we can now choose what we want to do with that. We can choose
Isn't that
now.
great?
We can choose now to love men in suits because, hey, we know we've reasoned with it.
That's
It
right.
doesn't affect me
Absolutely.
anymore. But yeah, that's the choice we have. So
That's right.
a couple of things. If you were to leave our listeners with, and it's going to be hard to think of one thing. If you could leave our listeners with a word of wisdom, a word of advice, what would it be?
I would say, oh my gosh. Yeah. Wow. That is hard. Don't let fear hold you back. I know it's scary looking over the cliff. Sometimes you just got to jump. If you're miserable, don't sit in your misery and think this is all I get. No one gets to tell you what you get. You can go get what you want. I was stuck feeling like, well, this is all I get. And so I'm just going to have this. Don't settle. That's what I say. Don't settle. You just keep pushing for it. How about that? Don't settle. I'll go with that.
Don't settle. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Shelly.
You're welcome. Thank you. You've been fun. I hope we can do this again sometime.
Yeah, I can't see why not.
All right.
I'm sure there's more rabbit holes we can go down.
Oh my God, yes.
It never ends, right?
Yep. True.
It has been fun, and thank you so much for sharing your story.
Sure.
I know that, as I said, this isn't just for people who have found themselves outside of or moving away from, as you called, the cult of Mormonism. It's for anyone who is settling in anything in their life to really look at what you're buying into, and have you actually been curious? Have you experimented yourself and gone out there and checked whether what you're believing is actually true?
That's right. And does it work for you? Or are you just faking it?
Even if it's not true, does it work for you? That's probably the best thing. If it's working, awesome. If it ain't, change it, right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So thank you so much. Now, if people want to get a hold of you, the best way would be to be listening to your podcast and reach out through the podcast platform.
Yeah, please listen to the podcast. It's called Latter-day Lesbian. You can find it anywhere. I mean, on most major podcast platforms. We also are on, sorry, the dogs are barking. Hey,
okay.
Stop it. You can also find us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, Latter-day Lesbian Podcast. We're also on Instagram. We're on Twitter. You can contact us at contact@latterdayLesbian.org. But my biggest suggestion is to listen to the podcast, and we'll give you all the information about where to reach us. We're forming a really fun community in there as well, of people who are recovering from certain things and helping each other out, and we have a good time. And I know that's it's a lot of very serious topics, but in the podcast we really laugh a lot. We have a good time with it as well. So you get a little bit of everything. Yeah,
and that's good. That's what life's about. Life is really full of the ups and downs, the laughs, the tears, and it's not worth living if it isn't, hey? If it doesn't have all that color.
That's exactly right.
So thank you so much. And as you're listening here, go over and check out the Latter-day Lesbian podcast. I know I've listened to it and been following you on social media, and I've really been enjoying your posts and your podcast. So thank you so much for the work you're doing.
Thank you. And thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Today is turning into the most curious adventure I've ever had.